In this lesson, we will look at the properties that allow us to classify pure substances as elements or compounds. When we look at an element, we see that it is composed of atoms of all of one type. Here on the left, we have what is known as an atomic element. If I were to zoom in on the balloon, what I would see are individual helium atoms inside of that balloon. On the right, we see that this is nitrogen. Notice that the color of the atoms are the same. This indicates that they have the same identity. So we have two atoms bonded together, but they are both the same, and so it's still considered an element. The key difference between an element and a compound is that a compound is composed of more than one element. So here we can have multiple atoms, but as long as both of the atoms are the same, as we indicated with the same color, this is considered an element. This is nitrogen, and we call this a diatomic element because it consists of two atoms, hence the prefix di. There will be a diagram showing the 7 diatomic elements that exist in nature that you will be responsible for identifying. Now we will look at compounds, which are also pure substances. The characteristic that we will use to distinguish an element from a compound is the fact that there are two different elements represented in a compound. Notice that the atoms are bonded together and there's at least two elements. So here on the left, what we have is sodium chloride. We notice the green ones, which are actually the chloride ions, and these purple atoms, which actually represent our sodium ions. So two different colors, these are bonded together, this is a compound. This is actually an ionic compound, and we'll talk about more about distinguish between ionic and molecular at a later time. On the right, we have another compound. This is actually methane, which has the formula CH4, and we'll talk more about formulas later. The key thing, again, that we look at here is that we have two different elements, and we know this because they're represented by different colors. So these are both examples of compounds. Here is a problem for you to try. Which of the following are compounds? Select all that apply. Remember that a compound must be composed of two or more different elements. So what we want to look for are the substances that contain different colors represented in our drawings. So A, we see the red atoms and the gray atoms, and these can be representing a variety of different elements. We're not concerned about that at this point. And so we see two different elements, so we know this is a compound. Okay. Likewise on B, we have 3 different elements here. So we can have more than 2, we just have to have at least 2. C, also a compound. D is an element. Okay. We notice that we have 3 red atoms. These are all the same, so therefore that's an element. E is also an element. This is actually a diatomic element. Has 2 atoms, however, they're both the same, therefore it's not a compound. And when we look at F, we see that we have 2 different elements present here, and so this is also a compound.